Hello, friends. Welcome back to the 14th edition of What the Facts, the most frequently asked questions about nutrition. So, last week I talked about sleep. If you didn't view that video, go back and check it out because most of the people in this country and around the world don't get enough sleep. So, I gave 10 tips at the end of that video. And a posting that in my on my website, www.fearlessmd21.com, where I go into sleep in much more detail. So make sure you check that video out. This week I am talking about steaming and blanching veggies. It doesn't have to be difficult to be whole food plant based or a plant-based vegan. It is so easy to have your veggies every day. And the standard American diet only has two servings of vegetables per day in it. So it's easy to get above that by just having some veggies ready to prepare. So first you got to shop and buy them. I had a video about selecting your foods, getting your list of foods, making sure there's some cruciferous veggies in there. Those are the ones usually green, but not all of them are green. Cauliflower is not green, but they're loaded with nutrients and they're but yet low calorie. You're not getting saturated fat, and you're getting some decent fiber. So you get fiber, micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals. Cruciferous vegetables have a lot to offer, but how do you prepare them? Um, just just about all of them you can steam. My favorites are kale and broccoli and cauliflower. I love to steam those, and Brussels sprouts too. But when you blanch them, you kind of get an edge at locking in those nutrients and locking in those vibrant colors and making them easier to come back to and cook in a stir fry, where you don't use oil, but a stir fry or a stew or whatever you want to make. So, for example, you can take some collard greens or kale, and you've washed it, you brought it home, you have it in your fridge. You can just come home, long day after work. If you're like me, you're tired and don't feel like cooking, but I know all I got to do is spend a few minutes, because I've already over the weekend blanched some greens. And so what I did to blanch is, uh, you take your greens that you've washed, and you've dapped them or let them sit out a little bit, dry off a little bit, and then you have a big pot of water. You can throw in a little salt, not too much, and you got a big pot of water that you let boil. And then once it's boiling, you throw well, don't throw, you just put in small quantities so there's no splatter, and so that the temperature doesn't dip too rapidly. You put in the veggies, and we're talking about 30 to 60 seconds here. Blanching is just for 30 to 60 seconds. You're not trying to cook the food. In some reports, you're still kind of raw when you do this, but I know there's some raw vegans that would say, no, no, no. If you boil it, it's too high a temp. But anyway, doesn't matter. I'm not a raw vegan. You put it in there for no more than 30 to 60 seconds, and then you have a strainer spoon. So you get that out of there, and you already should have your big bowl of ice water ready. That's called the shocking phase, where you take your scalded veggies, only for 30 to 60 seconds. You get them out of there, and you carefully plunge them into that ice water vat, that bowl of ice water. And so you get them all in there, and then they're not in there long. You just want to cool them down to where they're not hot or warm. But you don't want to leave them in too long, because then they'll get soggy. But you'll notice if it's kale, or if it's Brussels sprouts, or whatever it might be, they they get even more green and vibrant. And that's from chlorophyll, and you've arrested this enzyme that tends to break it down by going through this process. So it kind of locks in the nutrients. Now you can either put it aside. Well, you actually want to dry them off, so you put them on a lint-free towel or a paper towel, and kind of spread it out there so the moisture can be absorbed. Put a lint-free towel on top or a paper towel on top to absorb some of the water. And then you just let it dry off. And then you either come back to it within an hour, 2 or 3, if you're going to eat them that day, cook them that day, or you put them in the fridge if you're going to, cook them much later or perhaps the next day. If you're going to go more than a day or two, then you can put them in the freezer. You don't want to just bring veggies home, especially green veggies, but most veggies, and throw them in the freezer so you can come back to them weeks or months later. Something about that makes them not quite as nutritionally replete. Something about the water, when you rinse those off and put them in there, there's some residual water that crystallizes and kind of messes up that integrity. So blanching and then freezing can make all the difference in the world of locking in freshness, keeping the vibrant colors, and making it tastier, more savory. So consider blanching. Some people blanch their herbs too. You can blanch cilantro. There's different things you can blanch and put those in the freezer so they last a lot longer. A lot of tips that help. So steaming is really easy too. Now that is a form of cooking, and when you steam your vegetables, you can steam them anywhere from 2 or 3 minutes to, I would say, no more than 4 or 5 minutes if it's kale or something. Kale is very robust, so it's hard to overcook kale. It maintains its fiber and many of its nutrients, with exception of one or two. Almost no matter how much you steam them. But many veggies, especially spinach, you probably don't want to steam that more than 30 seconds to a minute. But depending on the cut, the leafiness of these veggies, you steam them for a few minutes, and then they still have a crispiness to them. They still have a vibrant color. They're cooked when you steam them like that for minutes, for several minutes, or for a few minutes. But they're delicious, and there's minimum effort. You're just talking about steam. Either having a little steam basket that you can buy, not very expensive, throw in a big pot or medium-sized pot if you're not making much, or a steam pot. It's usually 2 parts, or an electric steamer. I was given one for the holidays, and so you can, any way you want to steam, it's fine. I often save that water to use to make brown rice, or if I'm gonna boil something else, like I like to boil my sweet potatoes. Boiling sweet potatoes tends to lock in those antioxidant characteristics much more than baking sweet potatoes. So these are some little tips that can make life real easy. I usually do my batch cooking on the weekends, where I'll make a big pot of beans that'll take me for usually 4 meals, 4 dinners or entrees. There may be black beans, chickpeas, whatever, but I soak my beans over one night, then discard the water usually, unless it's black beans. You don't want to discard the water, but especially red beans you do, because you can get some issues with gassiness and bloating sometimes if you're susceptible, when you don't rinse those beans after soaking them overnight and then cooking them well enough. So the other thing I'll batch cook is rice, brown rice. I'll cook that and have that for the next 3 or 4 days. Sometimes I'll batch cook my pasta, although that's easy. You throw your pasta, whole grain pasta, into a big pot of boiling water. You're talking about, depending on what it's made from, anywhere from a few minutes to 10 minutes or so. And so makes it easy, makes life easy. So I just wanted to share those points, those tips with you. Let's see, it's going on 9 minutes, so I think this video has gone long enough. The tip of the week would be to just remind you that if you're going on this journey with me and you are eating more veggies, and it's a higher proportion of your dinner plate, along with the whole grains and the beans and the fruit, and less meat, egg, and dairy, which is the healthy journey, then make sure you're getting enough B12. Make sure you're taking B12 supplement. Don't think just because you're taking B complex, that's enough. You need to take B12. I may go into a whole video about that later, but I'll post a link in the information section of this video, Dr. Greger's breakdown on B12 supplement. So that's about it. Remember, you can catch me on Instagram, which is linked into my website, www.fearlessmd21.com. Hit the like button for me if you got something from this video. Look forward to chatting with you next week. Have a great week.